Tell your dad the money's going to your clothes and food, my mom would say, while spending my child support on her own shopping sprees and nights out. I lied for 3 years until I couldn't stomach being her accomplice anymore. I was 13 when my parents split, and life changed in ways I didn't expect. The divorce wasn't messy in the way you see in movies. No screaming matches or broken plates, but it carved a quiet rift through our family. Dad moved into a small apartment across town, and I stayed with Mom in our old house. Every month, like clockwork, Dad sent child support checks. He'd call or text, asking if I had everything I needed: new shoes, school supplies, maybe even a little extra for something fun like a movie. His voice always had this earnest tone, like he was trying to make sure I wasn't missing out on anything, even though he wasn't around anymore. I wanted to tell him the truth, but Mom had me trained. From the start, she had a script. If Dad asked about the money, I was supposed to say we'd bought me new sneakers or that I'd been signed up for some after-school activity. She'd coach me before his calls, her voice firm but casual, like it was no big deal. Just tell him we got you those Nikes you wanted, she'd say, even though my sneakers were the same worn-out pair I'd had for 2 years, with holes in the soles that let in water when it rained. Or she'd tell me to mention a soccer camp I was supposedly attending, when in reality, I was sitting at home watching TV while she was out with her friends. The child support money wasn't going to me. It was funding her manicures, her new purses, her fancy dinners at restaurants I'd never even stepped foot in. I'd see the bags from department stores piled up in her room, or hear her giggling on the phone about some weekend getaway, and I'd know exactly where the money was going. It wasn't like I was starving, but things were tight in ways they shouldn't have been. My clothes came from thrift stores, which wasn't the worst thing, but it stung when kids at school showed off their new hoodies or the latest phone. I'd smile and shrug it off, but inside, I felt like I was wearing my situation on my sleeve. Literally. School lunches were another sore spot. Sometimes there wasn't enough cash for the cafeteria, so I'd bring a sad sandwich from home, just bread and a smear of peanut butter, while my friends bought hot meals or snacks from the vending machine. I'd lie to them too, saying I wasn't hungry, when really, I was just embarrassed. Mom always had an excuse. "You don't understand how expensive it is to keep this house running," she'd say, or, "I deserve to treat myself sometimes, you know? It's not easy being a single mom." I didn't argue, but I felt this gnawing guilt every time I talked to Dad and fed him the lines she'd rehearsed with me. The lying made me feel like I was betraying him. He was out there working extra shifts, thinking he was taking care of me, and I was covering for Mom's spending. It wasn't just the money, it was the way she made it feel like I was in on it, like we were a team keeping this secret. I hated it. I'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Dad would think if he knew. Would he be mad at me? Would he stop calling? The thought of losing him scared me more than anything, but the weight of the lies was crushing. By the time I was 15, the cracks were starting to show. I was tired of the script, tired of pretending everything was fine. One day, Dad called while I was walking home from school, my sneakers soaked from stepping in a puddle. He asked if I needed anything for school, maybe a new backpack since mine was falling apart at the seams. I froze. Mom had told me to say we just bought one, but I couldn't do it. The words stuck in my throat. Instead, I mumbled something about being fine and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The guilt was eating me alive, but so was the fear of what would happen if I told the truth. Would Mom hate me? Would she kick me out? I was just a kid, caught between two parents, and I didn't know how to fix it. Update 1. Things started spiraling after that call. I couldn't keep lying, but I didn't know how to stop without blowing everything up. I started noticing more about Mom's spending, little things that added up. She'd come home with new earrings or a fancy coffee maker, but when I asked for $20 for a school field trip, she'd sigh and say we couldn't afford it. I'd see her scrolling through her phone, booking spa days or planning trips with her friends, and I'd feel this hot, angry knot in my chest. It wasn't fair. Dad was sending money for me, not for her to live like she was on some reality show. But every time I tried to bring it up, she'd shut me down. "You're too young to understand how money works," she'd say, or she'd turn it around and make me feel guilty for questioning her. "You think I don't sacrifice for you? You have a roof over your head, don't you?" I started keeping track of things in a notebook, It was just a cheap spiral one I got from school, but I'd write down what she bought and what I was told to say to Dad. New dress for her? I was supposed to say it was school supplies. A weekend trip with her friends? I was supposed to tell Dad it was for a math tutor I never had. Writing it down made it real, and it made me realize how deep this went. I wasn't just lying. I was helping her hide something big. Felt like I was carrying this secret all by myself, and it was heavy. One day I slipped up. Dad came to pick me up for our weekend together, and he noticed my sneakers. They were so worn out that the soles were practically flapping. He frowned and asked why I hadn't used the money he sent to get new ones. Panicked, I started to say what Mom told me, that we'd bought new shoes last month, but my voice cracked, and I just couldn't do it. Instead, I blurted out that I hadn't gotten new shoes in years. His face changed, like he knew something was wrong but didn't want to push me. He just nodded and said we'd go shopping that weekend. I felt like I dodged a bullet, but it was also the moment I realized I couldn't keep this up much longer. That weekend with Dad was different. He took me to the mall, and we picked out a new pair of sneakers. Nothing fancy, but they were clean and fit right, and I felt like I could breathe again. He didn't ask about the money directly, but he kept watching me, like he was trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. I wanted to tell him everything, but I was scared. What if he got mad at Mom and it started a fight? What if he thought I was a liar too? I went back to Mom's house on Sunday night, and she was furious when she saw the new sneakers. "What did you tell him?" she demanded, her eyes sharp. I lied again, saying Dad just wanted to buy me something nice. She didn't believe me, but she let it go. That was when I knew I had to do something. The lies were suffocating me, and I couldn't keep living like this. Update 2. The breaking point came a few months later. I was 16 now, and the guilt had turned into something else. Anger, maybe, or just exhaustion. I was tired of being the middleman, tired of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I started spending more time at Dad's apartment. Even though it was small and the couch I slept on was lumpy, being there felt like a break from the lies. Dad didn't have much, but he always made sure I had what I needed when I was with him. He'd cook these terrible pancakes that were always half raw in the middle, but I loved them because it felt like he was trying so hard to make things normal. One night, we were watching some old movie on his tiny TV, and he asked me point-blank if the child support money was being spent on me. I don't know what made him ask. Maybe it was the sneakers, or maybe he'd been suspicious for a while. My heart pounded, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. I could have lied again, like I always did, but something in me snapped. I told him everything. The manicures, the dinners, the trips, the thrift store clothes, and the peanut butter sandwiches. The notebook where I'd kept track of it all. I didn't cry, but my voice shook, and I couldn't look at him. I was so scared he'd be mad at me for lying all this time. But he wasn't mad. He just sat there, quiet, his jaw tight. When he finally spoke, he said he was sorry I'd had to go through that. He hugged me, and I felt this wave of relief, like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally let it out. He asked to see the notebook, and I showed him. Page after page of what Mom had bought and what I'd been told to say. He didn't say much, just nodded and told me to go to bed. The next day, he said he was going to talk to a lawyer. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I knew things were about to change. Mom found out when the court papers arrived. She was livid. She screamed at me, saying I'd betrayed her, that I'd ruined her life. She said I was selfish, that I didn't understand how hard it was for her to raise me alone. I stood there, feeling like the worst daughter in the world, but also like I'd finally done something right. I moved in with Dad full-time after that. Mom barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was to guilt-trip me or tell me I'd made a huge mistake. But living with Dad felt like a fresh start. His apartment was small and we didn't have much, but I didn't have to lie anymore. For the first time in years, I could look at myself in the mirror and not feel like a fraud. Final update. The court case was a slow, messy process. Dad's lawyer used my notebook as evidence, and it turned out Mom had been spending almost all the child support on herself. The judge wasn't happy. They ordered her to pay back some of the money, and Dad got full custody. I didn't see much of the legal stuff myself, but I know it hit Mom hard. She had to sell some of her fancy stuff to cover the repayment, and she stopped going out as much. Part of me felt bad for her. She was still my mom and I knew she was struggling, but another part of me was just done. I'd spent years protecting her, and it had cost me so much. Living with Dad wasn't perfect. His apartment was cramped, and we had to figure out how to make it work with just the two of us. But it was honest. He got me enrolled in a community art class I'd always wanted to try, and we'd spend evenings cooking together, laughing over his terrible recipes. I started to feel like a kid again, not a secret keeper. School got better too. I wasn't embarrassed about my clothes anymore, and I even made a few new friends who didn't care about what I wore or where I lived. Then came the first plot twist. A few months after the court case, I got a letter from Mom. I almost didn't open it, expecting another guilt trip, but I was curious. It wasn't what I expected. She apologized. Not a full-on, heartfelt apology, but she admitted she'd messed up. She said she'd gotten caught up in trying to feel normal after the divorce and hadn't realized how much it hurt me. I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to forgive her, but another part wasn't ready. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't write back, but it stayed with me. The second twist came a year later. I was 17, settling into life with Dad, when Mom showed up at his apartment. She looked different, less polished, more real. She asked if we could talk, just the two of us. I was hesitant, but Dad said it was my call. We went to a coffee shop, and she told me she'd been going to these support groups for single parents. She said she'd learned a lot about herself and how she'd let me down. She wasn't asking to be my mom again, not like before, but she wanted to try to rebuild something. I didn't know if I could trust her, but I agreed to keep in touch. We started texting, just small stuff at first, funny memes, updates about my art class. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The final twist hit me hardest. One day, I was cleaning out my room and found that old notebook, the one where I'd written down all of Mom's lies. I hadn't looked at it in years, and flipping through it brought back all the guilt and anger. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. Tucked in the back was a folded-up drawing I'd done when I was 13, right after the divorce. It was a picture of me, Mom and Dad, standing together smiling. I don't know why I'd kept it, but seeing it made me cry. Not because I wanted things to go back to how they were. They never could, but because I realized I'd been carrying this hope all along, even when I was lying, even when I was angry. I wanted my family to be okay. I'm 18 now, and things are still complicated. Mom and I talk sometimes, and it's getting better, but it's slow. Dad's still my rock, even if his pancakes are still terrible. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive Mom, but I'm trying to let go of the anger. That notebook's still in my drawer, but I don't open it anymore. It's a reminder of what I went through, but also of how far I've come. I'm not that scared kid anymore, lying to keep the peace. I'm just me, figuring out who I want to be, one honest step at a time.